This video is on operations on functions. Simply put, this video is about adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing functions. Now, just a note here, make sure you recognize that a closed dot, which is multiplication, is different than an open dot. An open dot is composition of functions. So be aware that when we do in this video the closed dot multiplication, if we were to instead use an open dot, that would be referring to the composition of functions instead. So let's add these two functions. We're using the functions f of x equals x squared minus 4 and g of x equals 2x plus 1. So to add these two, you just take x squared minus 4 plus the 2x plus 1. And when you add those two, you get an x squared plus 2x, and then minus 4 plus 1 gives me a minus 3. Our domain for this is all reals because there's no restrictions on either function, and when we add them, there's no restrictions. Now when we subtract, I'm going to emphasize that this is subtraction by putting them in parentheses because it's common to forget that the subtraction gets distributed through the second function. So we still have an x squared, but the 2x gets a negative in it because we're subtracting. Then the negative 4 minus 1, because you got to distribute that negative all the way over to the 1, is a negative 5. So make sure you distribute through the negative when you do the subtraction because it's a common error not to. Also on this one, the domain is all reals because there's no restrictions on either one of the functions or on the subtraction of them. When we multiply, this is going to be where we go ahead and distribute through twice. So I'm going to list both of them with multiplication here. So when we have two parentheses next to each other like this, it's implied to be multiplication. You can put a multiplication between it, but it's not necessary. So when we distribute through, you go x squared times 2x is 2x cubed. X squared times 1 is just x squared. Negative 4 times 2x is negative 8x. And negative 4 times 1 is negative 4. And that doesn't need to be simplified at all. There's no like terms. So this one also, because multiplication does not change our domain here, we're going to have all reals for the domain. This last one might look like the most difficult, but it actually is the easiest. When you do this, you're going to do f of x over g of x to do the division. And so what you need to do is just list this then with the first function, the x squared minus 4 on top, and in the bottom you're going to just list the other one, the 2x plus 1. Now for this one, what's difficult about it is the domain. Notice that we have a denominator, and the denominator cannot equal 0. So for the domain here, it's going to be x cannot equal a negative 1/2, because if you put in negative 1/2, that would give you 0 in the denominator. Otherwise, it's all real numbers for the domain. So operations on functions, you're just going to be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing them. Just remember that the notation, like if you have f plus g, it's the same as just doing f of x plus g of x. If you have f minus g, it's going to be just f of x minus g of x. Remember to distribute through your subtraction if you have to. And then the f times g, this is not composition, this is multiplication because it's a closed dot. You just take the f of x times the g of x. And then lastly, the last one is just putting the first function over the second function, and then making sure that for the domain you recognize that the denominator cannot equal 0.